This week we're going to cover the task of project risk management planning. If you do not try to predict the risk of your project, you are simply rolling the dice for the success of your project. The Project Management Institute defines a project risk as an uncertainty that can have a negative or positive effect on meeting project objectives. Some organizations only view risk as negative and call positive risk opportunities, which is what we have done when we did our SWOT. Project risk management tasks could include a risk management plan, the probability or impact matrix, and a risk register. Just as with the oil rig disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, there was a risk management plan that assumed acceptable risk. Those managers are now obviously rethinking the idea of acceptable risk. Now, your project might not have such a far-reaching effect as the oil rig disaster. However, for your organization, it will have an effect of an appropriate scale. So just what is in such a plan? A risk management plan documents the procedures for managing risk throughout the life of the project. The general topics that a risk management plan should address should include the methodology for risk assessment, roles and responsibilities, budget and schedule estimates, risk categories, probability matrices, and risk documentation. There are other risk plans that are often used in project management. Contingency plans are predefined actions that the project team will take if an identified risk occurs. Fallback plans. They're developed for risks that have a high impact on meeting project objectives and are put into effect if attempts to reduce the risk are not effective, sometimes called contingency plans or last resort plans. Contingency reserves or contingency allowances are funds held by the project sponsor that can be used to mitigate cost or schedule overruns if unknown risks occur. The elements of a risk management plan are the methodology, roles and responsibilities, budget and schedule, risk categories, risk probability and impact, and risk documentation. Let's take a look at each of these. The name of the project in our case was Just-in-Time Training Project. That was the example that we've been using all semester. In the methodology, the project team will review data available from the phase 1 of the project. That's the one that was assumed from the book. They'll review information related to the external projects to this one. The team will use several tools and techniques, including brainstorming, surveys, risk-related checklists, to assist in risk management. In other words, you need to identify the method that you're going to use to predict your risk for your project. Next is roles and responsibilities. In this case, the project manager will be responsible for leading the team and other stakeholders in performing risk-related activities. As detailed tasks and deliverables are determined, the project manager will delegate those tasks as appropriate. Let's look at budget and schedule. As specific task-related and deliverables are determined, budget and schedule information will be provided. You put your risk into certain categories. General categories and subcategories for risk on this project include business risk, in other words, supplier and cash flow, technical risk, such as course content, hardware, software, network, organizational risk, such as executive support, user and employee support, supplier support, and team support, and finally project management risk, the estimates, communication, and resources. So you can put your different risks into these categories. You will need to determine the risk probability and impact. This will initially be estimated as high, medium, or low based on experts' advice. If more advanced scoring is needed, the project team will determine an appropriate approach. and risk documentation. All risk-related information will be summarized in a risk register. Detailed documentation will be available in a secure area, which is normally placed on the project website. Let's look at some of these risk events and the probability and impact matrices. Risk events refer to specific uncertain events that may occur to the detriment or enhancement of the project. Negative risk events include the performance failure of a product produced as a part of the project, delays in completing work as scheduled, increases in estimated costs, supply shortages, litigation against the company, and maybe even strikes. We talked of positive risk. These events include completing work sooner than planned or at an unexpectedly reduced cost, collaborating with suppliers to produce better goods, and even obtaining good publicity from the project. So these are the risk events defined as negative or positive. Let's look at how you can chart the probability and impact of risk events on a matrix. The impact of the risk is on the horizontal axis. The probability of the risk is on the vertical axis. There were 12 risk elements identified for this project or in this chart. They are charted according to their impact and probability. So you can see that risk 1 and 4 in the top right quadrant have a high impact on the project and a high probability of occurring. So understanding and planning for these are most critical to the project's success. Let's look at one last item, and that is the risk register. This is the example of a risk register of the training project. A risk register is a document that contains the results of various risk management processes and is often displayed in a table or spreadsheet format. It is a tool for documenting potential risk events with related information. This is how you put the detail in each one of the risk items you have identified as important to your project. It is similar to the work breakdown structure dictionary entries, in that detail is given to the individual elements. This is the example for risk number 15, poor survey response. Each item identified as risk will have this type of detailed explanation of the risk. Now, we have covered the importance of identifying risk with a risk management, creating a risk management plan, probability impact matrix, and risk register. We should have these in our projects so the success of the project is not just a roll of the dice.